Good morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop and back from the World Carving Championships. Took a little break from carving leading up to the World Carving Championships, put a lot of hours into carving to get my entries ready. Taking a little break and doing a little change of pace. Actually, I had a collector that asked if I would be willing to do a robin, and just a smoothie robin. Sounds like a fun project to me. Been kind of getting more into songbirds or appreciating them more. First love is always waterfowl, but I think it's a good idea to mix up the carving projects. So we're going to do a robin. This is the first robin I've ever done, so I'm going to be learning as I go. So don't be too harsh in your critiques. But songbirds are kind of fun because of the scale, much smaller than a duck, and so I'm going to bring the camera in, talk about, I've already developed the pattern. I'll talk about how I went about that. Since this is a new species for me, I had to check with some references to get sizes and everything right. And I have some of my own reference photos that I took out back because we have a lot of robins in Nebraska, as you probably do in your part of the world. So I've got pattern development. I've got the bird cut out, and I'll talk briefly about how I got that done. And then we'll start the carving. If you're enjoying my channel and getting value out of it, please hit the subscribe button. That really helps me out. It doesn't cost anything, but it's definitely a show of support for this channel. My goal is to put resources together for people that might want to carve. And kind of branching out into songbirds widens the interest. Some people are just not into waterfowl or ducks, but are into songbirds. So we'll give that a shot and we'll have fun. Thanks for coming back. Hey, before we get started on the carving, just a quick shout out to Caitlin Denko from Wildfowl Carving Magazine. She had this poster, which has my hen mallard on the cover, and she had the poster at the Ohio show, also had it at the World show, and was very kind in gifting that to me after she was done with it so that I could hang it up in my shop wall, and I'm very proud of that. So just wanted to say thank you again, Caitlin, for that. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the pattern development. I had taken some pictures of a robin on our cedar trees in back through a telescope. So I've got some great reference shots. Also found some pictures online. Just wanted this robin to be kind of in a classic pose. Nothing too fancy. And then from a top-down view, wanted to pull the wing out on one side to create a little interest. So I've got the pattern made and the bird's cut out. You can, as far as size reference, you can look on eBird websites and they'll give you rough dimensions that will help you size your particular bird that you're looking for. You're rare to find a top-down view, so that takes some artistic just development, kind of knowing the bird is roughly in the round. So transposing some of those dimensions onto a top-down view. And then once I got the patterns developed, I did the cutout on the bird. And on this particular bird, I squared up a good block first, the right dimensions. Then I cut the top down profile first, like that. And then I put these pieces back on, flipped it on its side, and cut the side profile. So once all the scrap pieces come off, you end up with that. So now I'm going to start carving the bird. I've just started some pencil sketching. I'll get some center lines on here. We're going to have to narrow the head down to fit the body there. All right, I've done a little sketching. The wing on this side is actually going to be outside the body and drop down a little bit so I can show more of the wing on this side. This wing is going to be tucked back along the body, and so it'll be a little higher than this one. Then I got a reference dimension from the tip of the center of the tail here to where these tertials come together in back. You can see from the top, this wing is going to be offset. This one's tucked in a little closer to the center line. And then I've got my wing location on both sides, so I know kind of how far that wing comes up. And then I sketched in the beak here very roughly, just to begin to get a feel for how far that comes back and how it interfaces with the head. So now I'm just going to generally round things off, and then we'll do some resketching. I like to sketch just to keep things in mind as I go. I'm going to carve a lot of that, grind a lot of that off, but I'll keep resketching as we sculpt this thing. Okay, on this bird, I'm going to run all these carving videos at 2x speed, just so you're aware of that. And I'm using this round nose saber-tooth burr, fine tooth, to do some general rounding of the bird. I'm going to keep my center line intact as usual, but round down to that area. And that widest part of the side pocket area, if you want to call it that, I want to keep that intact as well so we don't lose the top-down profile. I've got to dig in this area to narrow up the head as it meets the breast. So I'm going to carve towards the back here on the head, towards that center line where I've penciled in. And now back here, I've got to ferre in the primaries without losing too much wood here. So that's why the sketches are helpful, as I take off wood. So this wing is tucked on the top of the tail. Now I'm going to round that belly area so we have a nice round belly. We don't want a square block. When we're done rounding, the bird should be nice and round and soft looking. It's a common mistake for new carvers to not take enough off, and they end up with kind of a square looking body from the front or the back. There, I'm narrowing that head as the neck meets the cape back there. Rounding this side of the body to match up with the other, and I'll be checking symmetry from the front and back as I go to make sure I don't get a lopsided profile on the bird. And notice I'm leaving these pencil lines for the wing intact right now, because I'm gonna dig in under that wing a little later in the video so that wing is drooped down a little bit on the side of the tail on that side of the body. So I'm shifting to this 1/4 inch burr, and I'm going to use that with a little more control to remove wood under this wing tip and begin sculpting that area under the tail. Need to go slow with these burrs, especially against the grain. They tend to snag and jump if you press them too hard. But they do remove wood quickly. You just have to keep your hands away from the burr. Now I want to repencil where that wing is lying and how it meets up with the tertials. And now I'll use this to remove wood on the top and kind of take that V back to where the tertial groups meet in the center of the back. Doing the same thing on this side, and then beginning to define where those primaries are, where the edge of the primary group is. I'm rounding that off. And then I need to take this area in between down where the tail coverts meet up with the tail feathers. So I'll take that down a little bit and blend it into the tail feather area. So we have a nice smooth flow down the back to the tail. All right, that's starting to take shape. Need to get some reference dimensions so I can know where these coverts, how far they are, how long the tail is. So I'm using my dividers to give myself a point there. And now I know I need to define those tail coverts a little bit more in kind of a V shape as they lay over the tail feathers. And then round that off so it's a nice blend. I got a reference dimension on how far the rump goes back under the underside of the tail and penciled that on, and I'm using the 1/4 inch round burr to define that. Not going to have a lot of detail under here since this is a smoothie bird. And then I'm kind of defining where the tail feathers come up on the side of the bird and meet the area close to the side pocket. I'm putting a little bit of a cup in the underside of the tail feathers there, but I'm going to leave that thickness on the end of the tail since this is a smoothie bird, just for strength. Just repenciling so I can get a better look at it. It's starting to shape up. Need to do some more layout work. I'm going to use this 1/4 inch burr to define where the cape is. I've got that, did a little bit of layout work on the cape and the tertial feathers there, so I know where they are. And put a little definition as the cape overlaps the feathers at the back. And just cleaning things up back here as I go. Little bit of definition is that wing tucks in to the feathers of the breast, but not a lot. I want this to be pretty soft and subtle up here. Just doing a little blending on the cape so that it has the appearance of overlapping the feathers at the back. Okay, that's shaping up pretty good. I'm going to put in a little cylinder here. This is a ruby cylinder, and I want to go in and use my pencil guidelines and narrow up the beak from the top down on each side and begin to define how far that beak goes back into the face and begin to remove wood with that little bit. This bit has grit on the end of it as well as on the side, so it's a nice bit for this type of work because you can use the end almost like an end mill in real tight spots, like right there. Just getting the bill shaped up and roughed out so I know where it meets the face. And I want to get that established before I round off the head. Now I'm using that to put a little separation between the upper and lower mandible of the beak. Again, not a ton of detail, but enough detail to convey the essence of the bird. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I can round off the crown. And again, I'll keep my center line intact so I don't lose my pattern and profile. Oh, I just lost my center line, but I did what I told you not to do there. It happens. All right, let's do some more layout work. I want to define the rear edge of the side pockets here and dig this in a little bit, put some definition as it goes down into the belly area. So I've got that 1/8 inch ruby bit and using it to sculpt that area. Going to switch to a little bullet nose ruby bit to go in and shape that area up and blend into the surrounding area. So we have a nice soft transition. That rump area of the bird will be white, so I want a little bit of that white to show on the side. Very characteristic of the bird. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I want to put just a little bit of definition in the tail feathers, and I'm going to lower the feather grouping on either side of the center feather of the tail. So I'm using that little ruby 1/8 inch cylinder again and just cutting a groove initially and then using the side of that bit to lower the tail section on either side of the center feather. Most of the detail back here will come in the painting, but I just thought it's a nice touch to have that central feather raised a little bit in the carving. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we'll work on the head, but first I want to use my 1/2 inch sander and just smooth everything out on the bird to see how we're looking and remove all the tool marks and get it rough sanded. I'll do some hand sanding as well to get things smoothed out and ready for a little bit of detailed carving on the head. I'm going to carve the eyes of this bird in as opposed to installing glass eyes. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute here. All right, I need some reference dimensions from the tip of the beak to the front of the eye. And I've got those penciled in. And I want to get the size of the eye from my pattern. I've got that established on each side, made sure they're level from the front. And now I'm going to use a little, very small cylindrical ruby bit and basically go around the perimeter of the eye and cut a trench to start things off. To get the eye located and then begin blending out away from the eye into the cheek and into the crown and the eye itself, so that we have a nice crown on the eye when we're done. And I'm going to go at this very slowly. So you can see I'm rounding the eye itself as I continue to go deeper. I'm going to pencil it on there so I can get a look at it. And now I'm going to switch to this little ruby flame bit, and it has a nice sharp point that I can go in and dig that eye in a little deeper so that we have some good shape to the eye itself. This will take some time. I just wanted to show you enough of this process, and I'll work on the eyes and get them shaped up and then come back. Now I want to put a little nostril in, and it's tucked it right up to the feathers of the head in this location, so just a little indication of that on both sides. I did do a little carving around the eye to give it a little personality as well. You can see that I've penciled in a few marks there where I've done some carving. Now I'm going to sand everything. Just finishing things up with a lot of hand sanding to smooth everything out. Pretty boring to watch me sand, so I just wanted to mention that that is the next step. Get everything smoothed out. Keep working the eyes to get a nice round shape. When we paint and coat the eyes, I want them to really shine. Just taking a look at the bird, I decided I want to go ahead and carve in these tertials feathers. So I'm using that little 1/8 inch cylindrical ruby and cutting a groove around each of those feathers that I've penciled in. Not going to carve any more feathers. I'm going to paint all the rest of the feathers, but I thought this would add a nice detail to the carving itself. You can see I'm using the side of that ruby bit then to lower each section, so we have kind of stepped down tertials. I'm just using the side of the bit there again to take each shelf down just slightly, but enough to show up in the carving. You can see it's casting some shadows already, and I like that. This will take some time to get these shaped up and cleaned up. And then I'll do a lot of sanding on these feathers after I do the carving so that they're nice and smooth and well defined. You can see I'm using the end of that bit like an end mill, as I said, and really shaping these feathers up. Kind of make these decisions as I go, since this is my first robin smoothie carving. I just felt like that level of detail really kind of finishes the look of the carving, and I'm happier with it like this. Just wanted to make a nice clean stand for the bird, and this will be painted satin black. So we'll really let the bird shine, but put it in the attitude that I wanted. So it's just a piece of tupelo with beveled edges, and then I gonna mount it with a nail. All right, everybody, that's a wrap on the carving portion of the robin project. And I did want to mention I sealed the bird with what used to be called Deft, and now it's called Prolux. Different company, same formula. This is semi-gloss, and then I also put a primer coat, just a gray spray primer on in preparation for paint. So next time we'll get the bird painted. Until then, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.